That's all I want to say. Hey, it's Father's Day, as our video reminded us, and because of that, I have to start with a story about two guys playing golf. Are you ready? There's two guys, Johnny and Malcolm, and they've been playing golf for 50 years. Every Saturday morning for 50 years, these two guys would go out and they'd play golf. And so they were standing on this particular morning on the first tee of the Cedarbrook Country Club, and Johnny says to Malcolm, he says, look, we're not getting any younger. One of us is going to pass into the great beyond. And here's the deal. Whoever goes first has to come back and tell the other one, is there golf in heaven? We got to know. So they stood on the first tee, they shook hands, off they went. Well, not that much longer, Malcolm passed on. And so there was Johnny. He's lying in his bed one morning, and this bright light appears in his room. And he hears this voice. And it's Malcolm. He goes, wow, Malcolm, is that you? He goes, yes, it's me, Johnny, I came back. I got to tell you what's going on in heaven. Johnny says, what is it? Malcolm says, look, there's good news and there's bad news. Here's the good news. Johnny, there's golf in heaven. Oh, Johnny's excited. Tell me about it. Malcolm says, oh, you are going to love golf in heaven. Dude, I drive the ball 400 yards. I never miss a fairway. You're going to love it. Johnny says to Malcolm, oh, that's so great. I can't wait. Malcolm says, okay, and there's bad news. He goes, what is it? You got a tee time next Tuesday. Two guys talking about golf in our scripture. Two guys not talking about golf. Two guys talking about something critically important, though. One guy, and here's the one I want you to look at today, with this character named Jairus. We don't know a lot about him. There's actually just three things we know about Jairus. One is that he lives on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. We know that because Jesus had just traveled east and then came back west, and here he is. We think Capernaum, but put yourself somewhere on the western shore, just off the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. We know that he's a synagogue leader. In fact, the text puts it in there 3 times, suggesting that title is important, a synagogue leader. What does that mean? That's not the teacher. That wouldn't mean necessarily he's the rabbi. He's more the leader. He's more the president of the synagogue. He's the one that would convene the synagogue. If this were the synagogue, he would tell you where you sit, by the way. He controls the budget. He controls when people come in and when people go out. He manages the affairs of the synagogue, which would have been, for a town like Capernaum, the center of life for this Jewish community. That would have made him a man of privilege. That would have meant that when he walked down the street, people were like, stop to shake his hand. Why? Because as a man of privilege, he could extend those privileges to others. He was like a religious mayor. To get a sense for this man from Capernaum, who is a leader of a synagogue, but there's a third thing we know about him as well from this story, is he's a desperate dad. He's a desperate dad. His 12-year-old daughter is, as the text just told us, at the point of death. He, at that point, in the beginning of the story, not sure how much, but he's a desperate dad. But so this man of privilege is in this predicament of what will he do with the situation that he finds himself in. And what we see is this amazing boldness of Jairus. Grab that, the boldness of Jairus, because he goes to where Jesus is, and now we're picking up with a story. He goes where Jesus is, and the text says there's this great crowd around him, this mass of people, a throng of people. This Greek word is important enough, and you don't need to know a lot of Greek, and I don't know a lot of Greek, but grab this one. The word is translated oklos. Oklos is the word. It's got 2 kind of meanings to it. One means that, means a thronging mob, but almost think of a riot. Think of like a group of people that at any point could tip the scales and turn violent. That's the first meaning of that word. But the second is, it has this sort of a sense of, this is the lowest of class of people. This is down in the dirt, salt of the earth, everyday kinds of people. And that's important because that means that they're not Jairus' kind of people. This is not the people of privilege. This is just all of us folks, everyday folk. This is not the kind of people that Jairus would typically go and kneel in front of, right? They would actually be just the opposite. Typically, in his world, in the town that he lived in, with the influence that he had, they would be coming to him. But in boldness, Jairus, and because of where he is in his life, decides, I'm going to drop down to my knees in this oklos, this mob, this dusty, dirty, I might get stepped on kind of mob. Why? Because of the place that God has placed him, but the place of his, not just his daughter, but of his heart. That I must go and discover who this Jesus really is. There's a story of a man that lived in the 1800s, in the middle of the 18th century. And he was a tightrope walker. His name was Charles Blondin, French guy, very celebrated. He's sort of famous. He was the first person to walk across the Niagara Falls. So picture Niagara Falls walking back and forth from Canada to the U.S. and Canada to the U.S. And he was remarkable at it. So he made it across, and that was wonderful. And then he started to kind of show off. So he put on a blindfold, and he walked across. And he came back another time, and he was walking backwards across Niagara Falls. They say he did it in stilts, so I need to get more information about that. But he was a remarkable tightrope walker. One day he decided he would do this. He got a wheelbarrow in front of him, and he started walking across the falls. Came to one side, turned around, and came walking back with the wheelbarrow. Turned around, came back, walked one more time, and stepped off onto the bank. People were, gathering. They're amazed by what he was doing. And as he stepped off the bank for the third time, he's saying to the crowd gathered there, "Do you believe that I could do this again?" To which, of course, they, cheering and oohing and ah, "Of course you can, of course you can." He said, "That's great. Who wants to go first in the wheelbarrow?" To which it got really quiet. There's a boldness to Jairus that I want you to hold on to. His willingness to come before Christ and say, "You know what? All of me, not my privilege, not my prestige, not my influence, just my heart, on my knees before you to discover all that you are." First picture of Jairus. Second picture, though, of Jairus is not just that he had this boldness, he has this perseverance. If you look into the story, if you keep walking it forward, the part that I excerpted from the story, as you saw on the screen, is another healing that happens in the middle of the story. If you know it, it's a beautiful story of a woman that no one would notice. She was an outlier for society. She'd been bleeding for 12 years. But Jesus stops and notices her and heals her. And it's a powerful story of the compassion of Christ. And so the crowd would be sort of amazed by that, and they would think, "Wow, isn't that amazing? He would even do that." But there'd be one person in that crowd who would say, "This is horrible. Why are we stopping?" That person's name would be, of course, Jairus. Right? Jairus, who finally did get the attention of Jesus, and Jesus was coming with him, and it was making traction. "We're going to see my daughter. We're going." And I wish the text would give us the speed at which they were walking, because I could just picture Jairus saying, "Come on, run with me." And Jesus, who's now stopped, delayed. I want you to try and get that in your head. And I was thinking about this. I thought about a time when my family was in vacation with my mother-in-law. We're going to point out my whole family today. My mother-in-law is over here as well, by the way. We were at their home, and it was in the middle of the night, and my youngest daughter, Lucy, was gasping for breath. She was kind of wheezing and gasping for breath. And so we woke up and went to her, of course, and we saw this, and we did exactly what you would do. We grabbed our daughter, we put her in a car, and we raced off to the hospital. I don't remember exactly what the speed limit was, but I can pretty much guarantee you that I was exceeding it as we drove to the hospital, the longest 20 minutes of my wife and I's life. So we get to the hospital, and of course we rush in, and they hear our daughter who's struggling to breathe, and so they quickly put us into an ER bay and place us and check her vitals, and then they disappear. And we waited. And then we waited some more. And we waited some more, and we waited some more. We were just sitting there going, "Okay, it's middle of the night, I understand, it's a skeleton crew," but we were waiting. Finally, I gave up waiting, and I went to go and find somebody, and we went over to the nurses area. There's a nurses station there, and there was about 3 or 4 people there, and they were there talking and laughing and reading magazines and just hanging out. I'm not going to tell you what I said, but I want you to think about Jairus in that moment. Of while God was at work powerfully inside their life, all he experienced was horrific waiting. "God, what are you doing?" And yet he persevered. Jairus didn't boogie out. He didn't give up. He hung in there. Even when the worst day of his life got even worse, when his friends come to him and say, your daughter, she's died. And listen to what they say. There's a kind of mocking undertone in there. The words were, and so don't bother the teacher anymore. Do you see the term they use to describe Jesus? Don't bother the teacher. Don't bother this strange person over here telling who knows what to the people. He can't help you. Your daughter is dead. The undertone is, Jairus, what are you doing here? You're embarrassing yourself here. You're down on your knees in front of this oxlos, this group of people you shouldn't be with. And by representation, you're embarrassing us. We belong over here. But nonetheless, it's too late. Your faith, your bold faith is misguided. Give up, stop, walk away. And what does Jairus do? He perseveres. He hangs in there. He won't give up. He won't give up. All the way back to where Christ is about to reveal the most remarkable thing for him. His boldness, his perseverance. And then this last thing, because he's about to be, the word from the text as it was translated today is, he's about to be amazed. The amazement of Jairus. I want you to think about, from whatever you have knowledge of, ways that Jesus has healed people. From the ill to the infirm, the blind, to those who are dead, brought back to life, like we're about to see here. Just think about the different ways. He actually uses different ways. Sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a touch, sometimes it's blood and water. I mean, he used very different things to heal people. Think about what he did in the situation that we just heard about with Jairus. What does he do? The very first thing he does is actually kick people out. He went back to the home, and there's family and friends and professional mourners. They would have hired wailers and mourners to make sure that this was a proper occasion. First thing Jesus does is to move them all aside, say, don't come in here. Maybe actually literally pulling them out of the room. So it's just Jairus, his wife, the mother, the daughter, and a couple of his followers, not even all of them. He says, no, this is a small occasion. And I want you to pay attention, in any text you see, by the way, in any text you see in the New Testament, where it's not a translation of the text, it's just a transliteration. So you saw it in this text here, so it's important. It takes the Aramaic and takes that expression you heard as talitha kum. Right? It wasn't, we get a translation to follow, but they leave in there the Aramaic. Why is that left there? Here's why. Because it's not a fully translatable idiom. It would have been an expression. Think of it as a kind of a first century nursery rhyme that would have been said. And so there is a translation so we as English speakers understand it, but it's left in there because this is exactly what they would have heard, and especially those, as the gospel writer was writing it, those first readers would have said, oh, I know what that is. It's a nursery rhyme. And it translates something like this, almost like just rise and shine, honey. It's what a dad would say to their small child if they went down for a nap. And they've been asleep for 20 and 30 minutes. You know what? It's time to wake up. And so they would gently come over and put a hand on them and say, Talitha kum. Meaning it was the simplest thing in the world for that touch and those words to be spoken, and the child would rise. But this child was dead and had been for some time now as the delay had happened. And so in the small intimacy of this moment, Jesus doesn't use sign, symbol, anything else. He just says the words, Talitha kum. You know why? It's because in the intimacy of that moment, and in honoring of the boldness of Jairus, and in the perseverance of Jairus, he wanted Jairus to see just how simple it was for death to be turned to life. And the words, it's more Greek word in here, that word that gets translated here as astonished or amazed literally means thrown on your butt. Can I say butt here? I can say butt, okay. Thrown on your backside, blown over. That's what happened to Jairus. For him. And notice the author doesn't even talk so much about the girl, talks about him, the mom, the family, those who were astonished by what God has done. The boldness of him, the perseverance, honored, that faithfulness honored with this now amazement of what it is that Jesus Christ can do. So I have to ask you, do you want that same gift of Jairus? The gift is one for us, and maybe we wait for some extraordinary time when we need to respond. But here's the deal: no one here really knows when their tea time in eternity is going to be, do they? And maybe it'll be an incredible moment, but there is actually just about in every day an opportunity for whatever tightrope is extended in front of you to take a step out in faith and see what it means for Christ to carry you, to meet him there and say, okay, God, I'm trusting in you. Where are we going next? Almost every day, maybe every week, maybe every month, there's a moment when your faith is gasping and wheezing and you're struggling and you're going, what are you doing, God? And each of these things is an opportunity to come to Christ in intimacy and trust and say, I'm placing this in your hands. Because as much, and here's the story of Jairus, as much as I want you to solve what is the agony of my heart, as much or maybe more, I want to know you. I want to know what you're like. I want to know in the intimacy of a quiet moment where others are pushed aside, others who might be saying, that's impossible, don't even try. I want to know in the intimacy of that moment, Jesus, who are you? Who am I to be as I give my life to you, as you bring your saving and redemptive love into my life? See, that's the ultimate gift of Jairus. His boldness of faith, his perseverance of faith was rewarded because he placed that faith in the most amazing God there is. So on this Father's Day, on this day and any day, I ask, would you like the gift of Jairus? To know the one that he trusted in, that he might redeem, restore, and bring you the very life that he's longed for you to have since the foundations of time. May it be so in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.